Welcome in to Make a Difference. He is Phil Martelli. I am Jared Phillips. Phil, we are really approaching the dog days of summer here. People headed down to the beach, getting to enjoy some quality time with family. And hoops, to an extent, definitely slows down a bit. But you could argue, really, for any college coach, that's never the case.
Well, obviously, all college coaches would talk to you now about transfer portal, and I'm always on. I'm always recruiting. Whether it's my current team, whether it's my future teams, whether it's high school recruiting, whether it's conversations with people about what could happen in a portal. But one of the things that irks me is when you hear teams, coaches, players, the industry itself talk about practice. So I want to clear that up and kind of vent a little bit. When it was created, and I was in on those meetings, and a lot of people were in on the meetings, the idea of keeping your players on campus for summer school, the idea of being able to still work with your players in the summer, as opposed to having them run off and work out anywhere and being told anything, and you don't really know the skills that they are developing. That was the focus. The focus was 4 hours a week on skill development, 4 hours a week on strength and conditioning in the weight room. Now, you could argue that 8 hours out of a college student's week is not that much, and maybe it could be more. Maybe it could be tilted a little bit more. The conversation, though, was centered around skill development. The conversation was centered around let your assistant coaches do work in the summer, whether it's player development, an organized team activity, whatever it was. And it was modeled after the NFL. Organized team activity, not practice. So there was to be coach and player interactions so that they were getting real information. And we were hoping, in a way, to stop what seemed like rash and sometimes uninformed decisions on transferring. That was what the purpose was. What it has become are practices. Teams are practicing all summer with the idea of we've lost some things. Like, where's the excitement around the start of practice, which is September 26th or 27th this year? We've lost that. When you were young, there was this buildup, Midnight Madness, and it was shown on television. And now we have we practice all year long. So I have some questions on things that could happen. Could we sometime in the future see teams scrimmaging? If you're practicing, where's the competition? Because now the legendary, and we're going to talk to our guest about the legendary Sunny Hill College League doesn't exist. The only college league that I know of is called Moneyball, and it's in the Detroit area. But competing with and against the other people in your area in college was a really big deal. I coached in the Sunny Hill College League to see if some of my ideas would translate to older guys. Could we see scrimmages in the summer? Could we see round robin scrimmages and benefit charities? Could that be in the future? Could it be the NBA style summer league? Everybody goes to one spot, you play it. Could that be in the offing? The NBA has done a remarkable job because the NBA builds everything in that you really do believe that it's 12 months a year. They get their games broadcast. So I wish we were still in skill development, not just for players, but for assistant coaches. I know we're not. and teams are now practicing. I just wonder, and I went through it at Michigan. I marveled at how much teaching went on, but I just wonder if a closeout drill on July the 8th translates to January the 8th. I'm going to be one man and say, I don't think it translates. I think it gets stale. And I would encourage everybody out there, how much playing is being done in these gyms? Are we playing pickup? Do we know how to play pickup? Are we gathering guys from the area to say, let's learn how to really play pickup basketball? There's a value there. But, and I'm not the old guy on my porch saying, get off my lawn. I'm just making an observation. It bothers me that we call summer workouts practice.
I think there's a maybe not so distant future in which there's college summer league that is it's sponsored by an NIL fund that players can get a kickback for that,
There
and maybe some of it goes to charity.
Breaking news.
I don't know. I mean, that just feels like you think of Players Era and things like that that are kind of breaking that mold. That just seems like that's a reality in the next few years, possibly.
Wow. But it's not a Martelli Minute.
No,
because it's not brought to you by Status Solutions Network is committed to making a difference by providing Alicia Law compliant safety technology to schools through a grant of use, ensuring that financial barriers never stand between students and proper safety. Each community has the power to create real change and to provide real security to our young people in schools. Learn more at statussolutions.com, statussolutions.com. And I have to share this with you. I went on there, and the work that they're doing and the work that they're continuing to do because of community leaders out there is invaluable. Just a suggestion. In these dog days of summer, take a look and see if you can help. statussolutions.com. The Martelli Minute. Where can you find it?
On Instagram every morning at 6:30 at Phil_Martelli.
Make yourself invaluable. Be a problem solver. What are your personal non-negotiables? What are they? You can't fluctuate here. You can't be like an amoeba. You have to have ground that you stand on. The program at St. Joseph's, non-negotiables. Any form of racism, any domestic issues, domestic violence issues, and stealing. That was done. Non-negotiable. Non-negotiable. What are yours? Spend your time with people and or projects that excite you and inspire you. Think about that. The people that you're going to be around, do they excite you? And the projects that we're all working on, do they inspire you? That's a valuable tool and a valuable day. A powerful statement to make. Help me, help you. Walking into your family home, walking into your work environment, working in any situation, a personal relationship. And if you look at somebody and said, help me, help you. Today, everybody out there has a project. Whenever you watch this, lift someone with a kind word. That takes no talent, takes none of your treasures. It takes some of your time, but lift someone with a kind word. And then we're always talking about being a lifelong learner. Just as you go through these days, and sometimes it's a little bit calmer and you have more time, please remain curious. By remaining curious, you will be a lifelong learner. The Martelli Minute, every day. Does not take summer vacation.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Instagram at Phil_Martelli, 6:30 a.m., sponsored by Status Solutions.
The Philadelphia basketball community is blessed because it is a community. It truly is a community. It's been built on the backs of legends, and many of you out there know those legends. If you're not from this area, name the name, and there's some connection with Philadelphia. And it continues to this day because of people like our guest. Our guest has an unbelievable ability to blend into every gym, into every program, without creating divisions or anxiety or angst. Our guest has done this seamlessly for over 30 years. It's impossible to do this. It's impossible to remove yourself from the pettiness, from the silliness, to be honest with you. But our guest has done this on all levels of Philadelphia hoops. And when he tells his story, you're going to find out that this expands well down 95. But if you say our guest's name, people right away say Philadelphia, Philadelphia. And he's done it. He's done it by being a professional from a very, very early age. He's very much like a coach. Can you imagine a basketball agent? If we say coaches have no off days, I am absolutely ecstatic that we got Andre Buck to spend 25 minutes with us, because in his world, there can be no off days. Andre, thank you for blessing Make a Difference and joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Thanks for having me. And such kind words, Coach. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And appreciate being here with you guys this morning.
So here we are. We're on the eve of the draft, but you didn't get here today. As I said, you've done this for 30 years. Can you take us through your journey? How did you end up here?
This morning. How to end up here
That's it.
this morning. Yeah. I'll try to be brief. I say often, man, I get tired of hearing myself speak, which I've been doing for longer than 30 years. It's I can go back, Coach. So it's an interesting story. When I was in fifth grade, my teacher said, "One day I'll read Esquire behind your name." And I didn't know what that meant. And so I said, well, she actually wrote in my yearbook. And I said, what does that mean? She's like, I think you'll be a lawyer. Now, at the time, I thought I was going to be a pro basketball player. So being a lawyer didn't seem to be too interesting or what I really wanted to be. But I had lawyers in my family. My dad was a New Jersey State Trooper at the time. He ended up retiring as a captain in the New Jersey State Police. My brother, who also was an athlete and basketball player. In South Jersey is actually where I grew up, down in Cumberland County, in South Jersey, in Bridgeton. Went to Cumberland Regional High School. But my brother now is the lieutenant captain at New Jersey State Police. So law has always been in my family. But that teacher put that in me in fifth grade, and it never left me. And so although I was a pretty good athlete throughout grade school and high school, played soccer, basketball, and track. Went to the South Jersey finals in soccer, lost to Shawnee. That was a big deal for my school. A bunch of country boys. With soccer as a second sport, we were pretty good. And basketball, went to like semifinals in South Jersey my senior year. Was pretty decent in that, and was on a good track team. So I had a really good athletic and academic experience in high school, honors. And I say all this not obviously to brag, but again to tell the story. And also, I don't know how many kids are watching, but I try to get that across to them. I was a National Honor Society student.
Mhm. Mhm.
I was president of my class for a couple years in high school. So all of that background in the end led me to University of Delaware, where I played basketball and was in, the honors program there, also academically, finance major, and member of the basketball team for 4 years. We went to two NCAA tournaments back in '92 and '93, the first two ever at University of Delaware. I tell kids now, which again age myself in that, say, if you watch the 30 for 30 of the Fab Five, when they beat Cincinnati in the Final Four, Cincinnati beat us in the first round. Nick Van Exel, I think, dropped 36 and we lost by 35. So you know how that went. And and again, just a great experience there at University of Delaware with my coach Steve Steinwettle, who we had our times then, but have become really good friends. And I'll get back to all my teammates, but even as I left school, had an opportunity to coach there at the University of Delaware. Chose to go to law school instead, as my fifth grade teacher had predicted. And I went to law school at Widener University and also in Wilmington, and then finished law school in '96. While I was at the University of Delaware, like I said, we were really good, 27-3 going into the tournament my junior year. Second longest winning streak in the country. We had 120 in a row. And then the next year, we also won over 20 games and went back and played Louisville. I was going to say one of our, other than going to the tournament, one of our prouder moments was we beat St. Joe's. So I don't think you were there, Coach, but we were happy about that. We, had some big wins, beat Rutgers and things like that when I was there. But what I didn't know what was happening, and again, it was really, you know, um, and I'll get to this because Coach said something. I'm gonna get to it in the end. I try not to. I had an unbelievable experience growing up, like unbelievable, man. When I was in high school, I had an exchange student live with us from Spain, and it taught me a lot. Again about people from different places. My family and well, my home was always the place where if a kid needed a place to stay, they ended up in our house. So my mom was Mama Buck, and so my home was always open to friends, and like I said, I had a lot of people staying there. I bring that up because when I was in college, I ended up roommates with a guy named Spencer Dunkley, Dunkley, and he had the name for the game, but he's from from England, and so he didn't have the game. He had the name, but he didn't have the game. And so we were freshmen together at University of Delaware, along with a few other guys we're all still extremely close. But my story wouldn't be my story without Spencer. So Spencer and I became friends. He reminds me daily, especially over the last few days, and it's going to be interesting how I tie all this together for today. He reminds me that he's so glad that he didn't kick my behind. He didn't use that when we were freshmen. Now, the real story is that I had to handle him a little bit because he wasn't acting as he should have in a few different situations. And so, I'm not the type to get into those types of situations where I need to use my hands or something, but I had to protect myself. And luckily, all of that happened because we end up being, brothers. Like Spence and I are business partners on various projects, and he ended up marrying a girl from my hometown. And I say it's interesting. I don't know if you know this, Coach, but both so Spencer Dunkley ends up being drafted by the Indiana Pacers in
Yes,
1993.
yes. I was
Yep.
hoping for this one.
Say it again.
I was hoping for this part of the story.
so, and also I like to say that when we were in college, Vin Baker was at Hartford. Ended up being I think eighth pick. Got picked maybe right after Bobby Hurley. Malik Rose was a freshman. So that conference, although small, had three, NBA draft picks and a bunch of other really good players. And so, so it's funny, man. I'm trying to stay on track because there's so many offshoots to the story. Because on the way here, I was listening to NBA radio, and my man Andy Miller was on there, and Andy was a part of the University of Delaware basketball staff when when we were playing there, which is funny. And Spencer ended up signing with Andy and Eric Fleischer out of school, and I helped him through that process. So, in terms of the agent stuff, I learned then, and back in 1992, 93, agents were calling, trying to get Spencer. I took all the calls. I did the interviews. Spence wasn't interested. His family was in England. That's what I was saying, about my experience in high school led to then Spencer Dunkley living with my family in the summer. And as I said, when he was a freshman, he wasn't very good. I saw and learned the process through him of getting better each year. He couldn't make a free throw. Well, he couldn't reach the rim from the free throw line as a freshman. Couldn't dunk consistently. And by the time we were seniors, I think he averaged somewhere around 20, 12, and 3.5 blocks, and drafted by the Indiana Pacers. And so I had, more than a front seat to that process because Spencer lived with me. He worked for me in the summer. I had started a basketball camp. I had coached an AAU program. I'll get back to that. I had a little apparel company that I was selling T-shirts in a bunch of different stores. The original NIL work back in '93. I tell people about a speech I gave in a class in probably 91 about name, image, and likeness. So I was on it back 30 plus years ago about what was coming. And like I said, so when Spence went through the process and was drafted, I was involved. It was much different than
Mm-hmm.
the process that kids that I have had since then. Spence gives me credit. Which I appreciate. He says that if I had represented him, he'd have made $100 million because he sees that some of the work that I've done with the guys that I do represent, namely PJ Tucker, who I've represented for 19 years, going on 20. Hopefully, we get another one. But it started back then in the early '90s, so that was '93. I started working with a guy, and I don't mind dropping names because, as you said, Coach, hey, listen, I claim Philadelphia. To all my Philly guys, I come clean that I'm from South Jersey. But as Coach said, I've lived in Philly gyms my entire
Entire
adult
life.
life. I say it again.
Entire life.
Entire life. I did. I played. I went to the Sunny Hill camps. I played in Sunny Hill leagues. Coach, you probably don't know this, but I was on the last championship team of the Baker League with Pooh Allen. Pooh made me look like I could play. Gave me all the passes in the right place, and played with guys like, again, Lamar Greer. And so yes, I've been in these. So I do claim Philly, especially in the basketball world, the NBA, and all around the world. They swear I'm from, the toughest parts
Yes.
of Philly, so I'm taking it. I am from the toughest parts. I'm from the gyms.
Yeah.
So yeah, so just went through that. In '93, I was saying like between '93 and '95, '96, I started working with a guy named Merle Scott, who I know Coach knows
Mm.
well. So Merle and I were representing a bunch of guys. I had at the time a bunch of guys that were going overseas. Um, and and it really taught me a lot. As Coach said, I've represented a guy named Malik Moore. I just met his son, who played at Drexel's, now at Loyola Chicago. I just met his son like a week or so ago, and he looked at me in amazement when I said I was your dad's agent back in the day. So I can go on and on. I texted with Marty Collins this morning. I'll get back to that. And I talk with Jameer on a regular basis. So, the Philadelphia community, in terms of, for me, has been great. Some would apologize that I played at Delaware. Wish I was in that Big Five, but it's been a great experience. What I want to say before I forget, that part of what I'm doing today, and Spencer's sons both ended up going to St. Joe's. He named and,
Wow.
and my kids just realized this, and I have three children. I have 13-year-old twins and a 9-year-old daughter. My twins are Adley and Bowden. My daughter's Charlie. Bowden's is a budding basketball player. He's playing for me, and we are one, and doing all the stuff that you got to do as a 13-year-old. And he's headed to Tatnall School, where strangely, coach, as a side note, I'm the middle school coach. But that's a whole
Wow.
side note that you didn't know. But it's more, he's going there because Marty Collins is the head coach there. But what you didn't know about Spencer Dunkley, and my kids didn't realize until yesterday, and I'm on my way today to the swearing in of Spencer's son to the Delaware bar. Spencer's
Wow.
son graduated law school, works actually for my wife's firm, McCarter and English, and his son's name is Slam Dunkley.
Holy mackerel.
I see.
I got so many. I got so many things.
Oh, wait, I'm not, uh, Coach.
Go
I'm
ahead.
not done. I'm not done. His other son is Air Dunkley.
No,
That's
So,
incredible.
no, but listen,
that's a
listen.
segment.
That's incredible.
So Spencer, that's why I said like the story wouldn't be Spencer's going to end up being a star of the show. Well, and again, it's not like his kids are Spencer has raised unbelievable kids. His daughter Ashton was two-time student athlete of the year at Temple and ran track. Slam and Air both were on the crew team at St. Joe's. Slam is an attorney. Ashton is a Georgetown professor in history or something like that. She has her PhD. Air is just graduated from St. Joe's, and his daughter Honor Dunkley is going to be a sophomore, I think, at Sanford down in Delaware, and budding basketball. Of all of them, she's the budding basketball star.
Wow.
so, so I had to put that in there. That all
Right.
of this and all of it.
Please.
Say it again.
It all comes together.
It all comes together. So,
And it actually, the actual, now I need to go. These next two questions are kind of going to be centered on this. In everything that you just mentioned, here's what I picked out: service to others. Started when you were in the 5th grade, the high school, student council, student president, the handling for Spencer. Service to others is what I think of immediately. How did
mhm.
that mindset develop? How did that personality develop? When I say to myself, Andre Buck, that's what pops into my head. He will serve others.
And it's easy question, and it's gonna go to you when you ask me the question at the end. Man, I'm a 4-H kid. I grew up in the 4-H clubs. So my mom one day tricked me. I was probably 7 years old, and she said, "Do you want to have a club?" And I'm a young kid, I'm thinking it's gonna be like a gang, like my friends are gonna be, whatever. And it was the best thing ever, man. It was a club of boys and girls in the 4-H, and I'll probably mess it up if I try to say it now, but it's I pledge my heart, my pledge. I pledge my hands to better service is part of it, and I haven't done it so long, but I learned it there. And I grew up in the 4-H. My mom was a 4-H leader. We had these meetings, and it was we did things in the community, did things for friends, and it's I'm giving away the answer, man. Like all of this came from my parents, man. I
Mhm.
have the most unbelievable parents in the world. I when I so when I meet with parents all the time. I was on the phone with 4 different parents last night about their kids NIL stuff. I'm all like it's and I and coach, you know me well enough. When I say this, like when a guy becomes my client, he is, I don't want to say, oh, he's real like family, but these guys have lived in my house. When I got together with my wife, like we had 7 or 8 guys living in my house. And it wasn't, and I say it now because it's strange, but it wasn't a strain. Like, they lived there. They worked out with our guy, John Hartnett, God bless his soul, who without him, I like that was my start. Back in the, 90s, early 2000s. So for me, it's always been in me that, and my mom and my parents put it in me really early.
The I want to jump off of that. I'm going to come back to that in a second, but I want to ask you this.
Hmm.
Today's world, Andre, this is not the same world. And I'm not saying woe is us. It's just not the same world in that now you can go into every gym in Philadelphia and someone will point to someone and say, he's an agent. Now, he might be working with a high school kid as an NIL agent. That's not your work. How do you get that balance between a professional, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, or just some guy, not even hanging a shingle. He's just running around because you took sports management classes, and now you, a professional, get lumped in with that same guy. Well, why would you be dealing with a 15-year-old on an NIL deal? How are you balancing that world?
Well, Coach, what was crazy is I got a call a year or so ago where a guy that I ran into on, on the middle school circuit, which again, it's crazy. I hadn't been, when I said I coached AAU back in the early '90s, and you'll probably remember I had guys like Jermaine Medley, LaRon Profit, Gary Lumpkin, Lenny Brown. I had all these guys that end up going to, high level schools, but this was back in the day, which again, I stopped doing it then because I went to law school. I didn't know it was a business. Like I didn't know that people were going to turn into what it is. And so then you move forward to what this is now. This is not what I thought this would be. I guess we all should have anticipated that it would be this. And until some of it gets better regulated and there's certifications for it, then anybody can do it. And it probably shouldn't be that. Maybe those that aren't certified NBA or NCAA or FIBA agents would think that it should be. But there just should be there should be more guidelines because, again, I was talking to a parents last night and I said to them, and again, I've got to be careful in that. There was an article that I did way back in the day. I thought it was more recent than it was, but I called myself the anti-agent, and that for me, my approach has always been, um, was Coach Steinwell asked me, "Why do you want to be an agent?" I said, "Because I want to help people." He looked at me like, "Man, that's not the help people business," but I've always approached it that way. So when you say, the current state of the way things are, like I told the parents last night, gave them free advice because I don't represent their children or whatever, and it's a little alarming. I was saying that, sorry, I stopped in the story that a year or so ago I got a call where the guy asked me if I wanted to represent his seventh grade son. My son was in seventh at the time. I'm like, no, like I'm not representing the seventh grade. Like I don't even know how. Like that to me is outrageous. If you want advice on, you know, on something in regards to your son, but representing him and throwing him into this business at that age, at 12, 13 years old, sounds crazy. I feel for the families and the parents and the kids. I mean, we all know, like, it is something to me that should have a professional approach.
Speak to
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
Yeah.
we just wife and I were down in Cabo at a conference, and that's what she was actually the speaker. Funny, she was out there speaking on NIL and sports, and I was in the audience listening. But she's had a side chair to it for 19 years, so it was she knows probably as much, maybe more than me, and that But her main thing in the theme of uh, the talk there. And what I'll say is it just needs professionalism. I mean, it's like anything else, man. It's, coaching or anything outside of our profession that you just can't practice law because, you read a book or you took a course. Like there are rules and you got to get licensed and certified and stayed up on it, educationally, even, in terms of the NBA. I just went to the Players Association agent meeting, and again, I'm believe it or not, old school in it. I'm one of the OGs, but I got to go at least every 3 years, and I try to get in there every year just to hear what's going on. So, like us with what's going on now, it's not even that guys will take a sports management course. Maybe there's nothing take like, and so I'm not saying that somebody that does something else can't negotiate a deal or put together a plan for a kid, but we know it's not that generally. It is, unfortunately, the way that it's been rolled out. It's been a money grab. So
The
I'm
here and
hoping,
the now, as opposed to a plan for life.
yeah, and so that's my approach. Of course, um, my it's of course my um, my approach is long term.
Yes.
Um, my approach is not just for now, but and I'm hoping more families that I talk to take and understand that, like, it's not just, hey, what are we going to do now, but a plan for the long term, for the development and longevity of of their particular kid or student athlete.
That this time of the year, right? Whether this comes out on the day of the draft or right around the draft, you have an NBA draft prospect, but also there's a whole other thing working where you're looking for camp invites or summer league. How do you manage your time doing what you've done for so long? Is it a small pool of guys? Is it a bigger pool of guys? How do you do this? And how many sleepless nights go into this?
Well, I know. Well, I'm on autopilot after all these years, so it's hard to answer because I just do it. I do it along with everything else I do. I mean, it's obviously so just ingrained and embedded in my everyday life. I'm for good or bad. Like, I don't have my. Everyone gets on me because every time they see me, I have my Bluetooth in my ear. I took it out because there's no one around, so I can hold the phone in my hand and talk. But I keep the phone in my ear for good or bad, almost 24/7. I try to take it out when I go to sleep, but I'm just it is balancing. Right now, it's a lot of phone calls. Preparing. I'm always preparing for the worst. Um, Preparing for if guys obviously don't get drafted, try to solidify summer league spots. um, if they're not in the summer league, we got to plan on what's next after that. And and then also have veterans who might have had a deal last year, might be going to free agency. Just preparing for it all. It is a heck of a balance to try to maintain. But again, I've been doing this so long, man. It just I'm able to, and I'll give Daryl Morey said it, and I'm proud of it. He said that he thinks out of all the agents that he knows that I have the best work life balance, and I'm
Wow.
yeah, and I'm proud of that. Like, so I try to, I make breakfast every morning for my kids, try to get them off and going. Then I just go through my day and go through the steps. I've already been over to the gym in Chester, went over to Feed On, saw some guys working out, came back. I'm gonna do this podcast. Got to take my daughter to the orthodontist, and I'm going to Spencer's son's
Mm.
swearing in for the bar. But all along, I'll be on the phone. My kids, for good or bad, are used to it, but I try to balance that. I'll get out in the driveway with my son a little bit, do some shooting, get him right for a little bit today. And then a lot of my work is at night, which is good, from about 8 till 2 in the morning. And then I'm back at it at 6 or 7. So it's I know how to handle it.
That before I get into this conversation about the Philadelphia scene, uh, speak to the people out there at all levels. Your communication skills, because you are a observer and a listener. How can we help, particularly young people, develop the ability to observe, not just look at something, but to actually see it, and then the ability not just to hear but to listen. That's what I've always admired about you. You're an observer and a listener before you are a talker and a pontificator. And you and I both know there are a lot of them.
Yeah, it's that's an interesting take. And again, man, I had to go really back to it's how I was raised. It's old school, and believe me, I run into it. Even with my kids, I mentioned my wife laughs when I say, "Hey, don't make me go old school on you." And the old school is, obviously, I grew up in a environment when when you're around adults, you do more listening than talking. So I've always been a listener first. And that's just, it's just been something that I've applied in everything. One, I like to hear, different points of view. Even last night, and again, I keep going back to this because it's current, but, what I asked a couple of the parents I talked to, I said, well, just please, let me know what you're thinking. And, I wanted to hear their thoughts before I gave them my opinion. So I think that's it. I like to hear, what someone's thoughts are, what they're really looking for, what their expectations are. And for me, it's all about expectation. Whenever anyone asks if I want to represent someone, I say it depends on what they expect. My experience is so broad. I've represented guys in the way in every league in the world, and fortunately, I've had champions in every league in the world. And I don't think people always value that the way that they should in terms of the profession. It and I was told this once I interviewed for a job with the Dallas Mavericks years ago. I was going to serve as an assistant general manager to a guy, friend of mine, who was going to be the general manager. He left after a month. I never went. But what I learned from that, and again, Coach, it goes to what you said, it was an opportunity to learn. What I learned from that was the value of they said, well, man, you place all these guys all over the world, but it's impressive. But what's more impressive is that they've won. They've been play. They've been.
Wholeheartedly agree.
Say it again.
I wholeheartedly agree right there.
Yeah, that they've won. That they've been Player of the Year. That they won MVP. And last night I had another one win. Tyson Ward won the French Pro A Championship. He's also won the Champions League, the Euro Cup. He's won the French Cup, some other cup, the German. They were first in Germany. He's a kid that he's out of Tampa, Florida, played at North Dakota State, Tampa to North Dakota State. Like there's a lot of schools in between there, and played for the Spurs last year. And I'm getting multiple calls about him from NBA teams. And his head coach from Europe is the head coach of the Memphis Grizzlies. So the head coach of the Memphis Grizzlies was Tyson's coach in Paris last year, and his coach in Germany the year before. So, and it goes to what you said, Coach. I try to listen to expectations and learn. And and you're right. I don't know. I was in the gym this weekend. I was at DMV Live and Philly Live, and I like to, obviously we're watching and evaluating, but I also like to, watch and observe and see what's going on, and of course see everybody I know. And I'm just that's what I am by nature first,
Mhm.
an observer, listener, and then, and see how I can help. I mean, I think it goes back to the same thing.
The next to the last question is this one. Because you know the last question, but this Philadelphia scene, the this whole scene, could you describe it? Could you describe how you've kind of managed to navigate this scene? Because you know me, I love it. I
Mhm.
love it. I love it. I love it. And I just think that from the outside looking in, people think well, you can't get in there and you can't, and they're this and they're that, and they're wise guys and they're whatever it would be. But how have you managed this Philadelphia scene, and how would you describe it to somebody outside?
Uh, well, like I said, I was introduced to it. I was a little bit of a basketball player in it, from South Jersey, and then played in some things in Philly. And for when I went up to Philly back in the day and played in, I think, the high school league, I was on the South Jersey team. The kids from my school were like, couldn't believe that I was going up to Philly to play basketball, and we played at McGonigal Hall. So that was a really big deal in my town that I did that. Um, and so it started then, just recognizing one, the difference from where I was from, and then being in that scene and playing in that league. And then, my in my profession, I got very fortunate. very fortunate that I was taken in by John Hartnett as a a partner, so to speak, in that he knew he could trust me, or I built trust with him. And then I built trust with you guys, with you, with Bruiser, with Coach Dunphy, with John Giannini. John Giannini coached a number of the guys I played high school with. He coached them at Rowan. So then when he was at Maine, a friend of mine coached with him there. He comes down at LaSalle, and like I said, to be honest, man, you guys took me in. And now thinking about it and hearing you say it, like, luckily, I was raised right to be able to be trusted.
Mhm.
And so I don't undervalue that. I really value the fact that I built trust, and I keep up, and all the relationships that I have with everybody now, I feel as though they're authentic and real. I talk to these guys all the time, from Bruiser to Jeff Arnold, and all the guys were still close. Philly is a tremendous. I tell everybody, it's a tremendous basketball city. Tremendous. Um, from the grassroots all the way up. We got to get our Sixers right, but it's a tremendous basketball city with tremendous personalities and people that care, love the game. It is really a community and a brotherhood. Like,
Mhm.
I love it too, and I've just been able to navigate it just by being authentic and being real and being honest and trying. And I've always tried to help, and probably somewhat to my detriment sometimes, everyone. Like,
Yes.
if I can do something, I'll do it. If I can help get a kid an opportunity, whether it be high school, college, or pro, I'll do it without worrying about whether or not I'm going to make money or how much. I mean, that's the honest truth. So I've done a lot of that, and I'll continue to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Every word describes Andre, but it describes this Philadelphia community. And I think the big takeaway for me is I have relationships with everybody to this day,
Hmm.
not business relationships, not like what can you do for them or what can they do for you, but the fact that, you know what, this is real. And that ball has, I've said this forever. It's the memories and the relationships that the ball has given all of us. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I know you've been waiting for this one. Andre, we ask every one of our guests this question because it is about make a difference on this podcast. Who's made a difference in your life?
Well, I said it earlier, obviously I had teachers, coaches. I mean, there's way too many to name, and friends that have all made a difference. From my fifth grade teacher to all the coaches I've had from the time I've grown up through college, and I have unbelievable friendships throughout all of my relationships, whether it be, college teammates, and we named a bunch of guys to the basketball community. But first and foremost, I got to give the credit to my parents, who are the most incredible people that I know. And then I got lucky because my in-laws are just as incredible. And so I've just been lucky and really, really blessed with incredible family, uh, with incredible people that are really supportive. As you said, man, they got to be supportive in knowing that the other night I said it was a Monday night, and I said I might have to go to Paris tomorrow, and they just looked at me like, okay, and know that everything will run smoothly if I do. And so I've just been blessed with an incredible family, both from my family, and now my family now with my like I said, my parents, my in-laws, my wife, my kids. I got incredible people that are really, really supportive and make a difference for me every day.
Well, Andre, thank you for your friendship and thank you for sharing with the people that will pick up this podcast and be better. Not be better agents, not be better, but we're going to be better because of your communication skills, your observation, and your ability to listen. Thank you, thank you, thank you for
Thank you. Thanks for having me. All right, take care,
And
guys.
thanks so much.
Yeah.
I really love that, just that peek under the hood too, of just like the ins and outs of like what is an NBA agent up to in this week, which is arguably maybe the busiest week, other than open a free agency. I mean, it's just
You know what?
the phone is just going nuts,
One
right?
of the things I was thinking about was he mentioned PJ Tucker. So, do you, as the agent, are you watching which team picks which guy and how does that guy fit into a need that they have? But then think about it. You're comparing, I think he said he's 18 or 19-year pro with an 18-year-old kid. PJ Tucker has been in the NBA longer than Cooper Flagg has been alive. How do you process all that? And it's this, to me, and I'm not an NBA expert. I don't purport to be. I don't know who they should take. I don't know any of those things. But I just want to say pause and say, what 18 or 19-year-old can go in there, that man's league, and make a difference? If I'm not mistaken, no rookies played on OKC or Indiana. Is that accurate?
I mean, both. Well,
Did they
the
have a
Thunder are
rookie?
extremely young, but
I know,
yeah,
but they
not
didn't have a rookie.
like getting serious minutes. I mean, no,
Right.
it's
This same core of that just won the NBA championship. Did they not win 22 games 2 years ago or 3
some
years ago?
something like that. It took them
It-
a little bit to get this train rolling for what people consider could be a dynasty, given
yeah.
the core they have. That remains to be seen,
But
but
well, there's a lot of people out there over these next couple of days figuring out where they're going. But I already had those answers where I've been.
you don't have the answers of who is headed to
I
Philadelphia
do not.
in
I
this
do
first
not.
round, but
I do not.
you know where
And,
you're headed.
uh, but if headed to Philadelphia is a little bit of cooling system, we're not going to be 100 degrees, I don't think, for the next several days. But this has been quite a battle. But where I've been, I attended a grade school reunion. But you want to know how old you are? Take in these facts. It was the class, some St. Philomena's, 67 and 68. I'm a 68 graduate. The people there were anywhere from 70 to 73 years old. To accommodate everybody, this reunion was on a Wednesday in the afternoon, 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock. And the overriding theme in the reunion was, well, at least I can drive home while it's still light. That is quite an indictment.
4 to 7 is actually later than I thought you were going to say. I mean, that's almost like you're blowing by like the early bird specials, and I'm a little surprised it's as late as it was. Really,
It was quite something. And then the next day, I was able to go to the Malvern basketball camp. Head coach Paul Romanchik, terrific player at Penn, wonderful coach. Some setting. I pull into Malvern, 250 kids on the football field for football camp, 150, 180 kids in basketball camp. And I was able to speak at that camp and give them a little bit of the idea of make sure you're reading, make sure you say thank you, and then some basketball. They want to go out in their yard, in their schoolyard, in their park, down the shore. They want to grab their dad, their older brother. Here's a way to practice for 30 minutes and have some fun with that. So I thank Paul for allowing me to come in and do that. And then I had a really tight schedule. And then Armageddon hit. So we lost power for days. We lost trees. We lost the ability to get from spot A to spot B. People out there might not know, but my daughter Elizabeth lives 5 minutes. And she was at the Jersey Shore, and her daughter was home I was going to pick her up to take her to practice for lacrosse. And a 5-minute trip took me 55 minutes because of the roads that were shut down with trees down and power outages and that kind of thing. So because of that, the next day I missed a meeting with Fran Dunphy and Michael Steinberg. He's going to take over the chairmanship of the local coaches versus cancer. Was unable to get to that meeting. Hackers versus cancer, way up in Montgomery County. I was supposed to be their official starter for their golf tournament. I wasn't able to get there, and I wasn't able to get to Widener Golf on Monday, but I was fortunate enough to be able to get out of Delaware County and head down to Avalon to spend some time with Judy but even Elizabeth was headed back this way. Everybody's worried about their freezer and their food and their lights and their alarm systems and so it was quite a 4 days with a little bit of recovery. Was on a coaches versus cancer call with Kelly and her staff at ACS, Fran Dunphy, 6 representatives of the Philadelphia Big Five, because we want to pick that program up. It's gotten a little stale, but we need to pick that program up. And then obviously prepping for what was a wealth of information in today's podcast. And then I looked at the calendar and said, where am I going? Well, podcast. I appreciate all of your help with that.
I was going to say, I'd have to guess with what we got coming up, you're hitting Avalon for this 4th of July. I'd be my guess.
I'm going to try a little bit of that, but I am going to work my way back to do next week's podcast, which is going to be fascinating because we're going to focus on a topic of today that is impacting this whole country. And we have a young woman, I'm going to say that, a young woman, young in heart and young in spirit, to share with us next week. But I'm going to drive further north. Rob Kennedy has invited me to Pocono Invitational Basketball Camp, an outdoor basketball camp, and I'll make a presentation there. And then spend some time with family. But I do need to do this because I've made a pledge to myself. I want to get back into reading and not just like this planning and this driving and moving. There's a book out there and this goes to that Philadelphia basketball community. There's a book out there I just finished called Onward. Joe Rabbi Rabzinski wrote this book. He was the coach in the Catholic League for a long time. He won a Catholic League title at North Catholic, his alma mater. He wrote a book about the JV team at North Catholic that won a playoff game because the varsity was suspended. You need to find that book. That's actually been nominated for the Basketball Hall of Fame, that book, that story. His follow-up was called Onward, where he describes all these connections and all these relationships. It was a terrific read. He ended up retiring from the Philadelphia when the schools were starting to close. He moved to Delaware. He won a state championship in Delaware. He's coached on the professional level with the Philadelphia Aces. Check that team out. Rabbi is a tremendous guy. He's the president now of the Markwood Club, which honors high school basketball in the Philadelphia area. And what a guy. What a really terrific guy. And the names, if just the people whose names are mentioned in the book, if just those people read this book, it's going to go on the New York Times bestseller because he mentions every name out there in Philadelphia. So I sent him a note in the past couple of days and I salute him again. Rabbi, really well done. Why? because it focuses on the memories that this game creates and the relationships. So again, what did Andre Buck talk about? Memories and relationships. We thank him. And we are really interested now in still hearing from people. Where can we make a difference? And how can they find us?
Well, there's a couple easy ways to find us, folks. If you head on over to pnjmakeadifference.com, that's where you can get in touch with Phil to help him make a difference, get boots on the ground, either in the classroom, on the court, or off the court, in the workplace, wherever that may be. That is where Phil is trying to make a difference each and every day with his leadership talks and with everything we are trying to do with Coaches vs. Cancer and beyond. We are at Make a Difference Pod on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And we are at Make a Diff Pod on X. Make a Difference with Phil Martelli on Facebook. If you are watching on YouTube, feel free to like and subscribe. If you are listening on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts, we would really appreciate that 5-star rating. We will be back next week with A&O Callahan. That will be a fantastic show. But man, we've been pumping these out. I mean, Josh Verlin, just a few days ago, Andre Buck here today. Terrific insight into the NBA draft and that NBA agent process for him, and just his life process as well, which was just
really cool.
A fascinating listen. And we encourage you to keep checking these out. Man, we got a couple great guests coming down the pipeline that can't spoil them just yet. But man, oh man,
we have quite a July. There will be no summer break. We will do summer reading.
There will be summer reading, but no summer break.
You know, the Josh Verlin led into Philly Live, and I heard from people that said, hey, I went there, I saw this game, I saw that game. There is another weekend. If you get to this during this upcoming weekend, there is a Philly Live 2. They'll have the same number of teams, the same level of competition. So everybody out there, if you want your basketball fix and it's not fulfilled through the draft, then they'll still be out there. But we also have to say, Philly's at Atlanta this weekend, and we are going to congratulations to Tom McCarthy, one of our guests, a first-time grandpop the other day.
Congrats, Tom.
So
awesome.
We're congrats, but just so you know that he stays on the job. Late into the night the other evening, Tom and I were going back and forth about how is it possible, man on first, top of the ninth, losing 1-0 on the road, and Buddy Kennedy, followed by Rojas, and then Rojas, 2-0 count, and he swings at the next pitch, which was out of the strike zone. How about the take sign? Here, ready? Back to little take. Here's the take sign. Got to have it. I'm a little disappointed, but big weekend this weekend in Atlanta.
Big weekend. I'm glad you got your Phil's fix in there. I know you were chomping at the bit. Only an hour and 3 minutes in the episode before I can hold you off until you get going with the Kennedy. Oh man, the Phils will be all right. I got faith.
Great pitching, and don't worry about the playoffs, because the bullpen shrinks in the playoffs, and it's going to be a 3-man bullpen. Probably an additional starter. One of these young guys will go to the pen. So keep the faith.
Keep the faith.